I thank the organizers of Global Ayurveda Festival for giving this opportunity to present in front of you. I thank and greet all the panel delegates too. Can I share my screen?
Yes, madam. Yes.
Is it audible? I mean, is it visible?
Yes, madam. It is visible.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I thank everyone for this opportunity. Under emerging sciences relevant for Ayurveda, I would like to present computational chemistry for Ayurveda, where we have worked a lot actually. So, for developing a precision-based medicine. Well, when I say chemistry or chemicals, probably it's the most hated word, not just in Ayurveda, but in the general public also. So that's why you have these coined words like, biocompounds or nutraceuticals or phytocompounds, etc., to make it, pleasing to the ears. It's a kind of very obnoxious word. Almost as it's taken almost as an opposite to natural, safe, or body-friendly. Everybody wishes the world is free from chemicals, actually. Okay, but just look at those two chemicals there. These you must be knowing. Everyone knows this is testosterone and estrogen, and they differ only by 1 carbon and 4 hydrogen, and they make all of us actually, man and woman. So the another complex chemical that you're seeing is what is your love hormone or oxytocin. So when you say love is in the air, it's again the chemicals. This is true with even fruits or flowers smelling beautifully, because most of them are esters. Next thing is, without even realizing, we have actually accepted, though we have a hesitancy to accept the chemicals, but we have accepted the chemistry as such. For example, if you believe in the RT-PCR for COVID-19, you've actually accepted the whole process of biochemical reactions that take place behind the test. Or it could be urine glucose test or similar tests where, if the glucose is reacting with the Benedict solution, you have accepted the chemistry. Similarly, if you believe in the standardization of raw materials, you have accepted the chemistry. Another thing is everything in the nature is non-toxic. Now, if that was true, then we wouldn't have had abrin or strychnine or hemlock. These are some of the plants which are, the toxic. But only thing is their chemicals are very complicated. Similarly, when we all see the food, milk or ghee or fruits and vegetable, instantaneously mind tries to think that they are free from chemicals. But each one of them have enough chemicals, be it maltose, be it lactose, be it amino acid, or be it beta carotene, take anything. So I think we have a kind of undue fear or hesitancy to think that everything under sun has chemicals in it, including charcoal is a chemical. Only thing is, if you observe, nature is a better synthetic chemist than us actually. If you see man versus nature here, on the left you see simple paracetamol, whereas on the right we see a complex molecule synthesized by nature, which we fondly call in our favorite plant ashwagandha. These are withanolides. But when you think of synthetic chemistry, immediately what comes to your mind is pressurized cylinder, high pressure gases, you dread to go near that. But when you see this, simple curcumin in very harmless looking small herb. Do you even think that so much of biosynthesis has gone behind, so many chemical reactions have gone behind this production of this curcumin, which all just starts from an amino acid here, but it goes through so many reactions, and this is because nature or plants have developed advanced enzymatic reactions, enzymatic methods, the biosynthetic pathways over millions of years. And they do it all very silently. So, from thinking from this generalized way, moving towards precision is the key actually. When you think about diet or nutrition also, everything is not wholesome, or everything doesn't have required nutrition in it. Sometimes you may need supplementing, and when that has to happen, it is the precision that comes into picture. And also, if you see, are we really biased sometimes? Because if you see curcumin, or if anybody says curcumin, it feels very hearty and feels like as if it is a natural product. There are in fact curcumin selling companies also. But when I say valproate, your mind thinks that it's synthetic, it's chemistry, it's chemical. But actually, if you see these two structures, where it is derived from is the valeric acid, which is present in Valeriana walshai or Valeriana jatamamsi, which is a tagara. But we have not done it actually. So this is how every natural plant is a chemical factory in itself. So we have this huge opportunity of analyzing our plant materials, plant fractions, and take it to a precision medicine. So we need to stop going behind popular molecules like curcumin. We have much more better products or better molecules than these commonly known nutraceutics. If you see, Ayurveda has not been studied in depth in this line. Only about 50 to 60 plants are used in 90% of the formulation, whereas India has 40,000 plants. So having understood this, you now know that the chemicals are in the plants or nature is only very diverse and complex and huge in numbers. It's humanly impossible to study them methodically actually. So here comes the necessity of computational chemistry. So computational chemistry is a branch of computational biology which deals with interactions of drug molecules, drug-like molecules, to make you understand its pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, all in a virtual, biologically simulated environment of the software. So here comes the concept of solubility and absorption, which is most important to understand I think just now Dr. Deepak ji told about curcumin and its bioavailability. That's the same thing we need to look at many of our molecules or many of our compounds. Understand that all will not be absorbed in the gut. Only those which have solubility patterns, absorption values, they will be absorbed, and which are kind of lipophilic, in the sense they have to pass through the lipid bilayers, and they have to then they have to be also water soluble enough to be taken through the aqueous bloodstream to the target tissue. And again, in the target tissues, it has to pass through the lipid bilayers. So you need to understand the solubility of these materials. They have to be partially water soluble and liposoluble, rather lipophilic. But if your compound in your medicine is completely non-polar, do you think Kashayam will ever work? Because we have this attitude that everything you boil and drink, everything is sold as Kashayam. Kashayam is almost kind of a synonym to Ayurveda now. But if it is, as I said, non-polar, that means it is not water soluble, your medicine is not going to work. And how will you even know this? So any oral drug, when we take, it has to pass through the gut lumen, that is the gut wall, then it has to pass through the bloodstream to the liver and needs to get metabolized. And only after metabolism, it is sent to the systemic circulation. By this, most of the medicine, what you have sent, is also degraded. So you need to understand how much of your medicine is getting degraded or morphed or even sometimes improved when the drug happens to be a prodrug. Do you think Ayurvedic medicine can bypass this scenario? I don't think so. So in computational chemistry, mainly what we look at is drug likeness or druggability, then the pharmacokinetics, then pharmacodynamics. In the drug likeness, you have Lipinski's rule of 5. It is rule of 5, not 5 rules. So there are some other rules as well, but this is most commonly accepted. If your molecule is if your molecular weight of your compound is more than 500, it is unlikely to be absorbed into the tissues. Similarly, if it has more than 5 hydrogen bond donors or 10 hydrogen bond acceptors, that is either hydroxyl groups or NH3 groups, then it is unlikely to be unlikely to show a drug-like activity. Similarly, is the lipophilicity. So once you know your material is soluble enough, then you can take it to the further studies of pharmacokinetics, which mainly deals with the ADMET studies, where you study about the absorption of the molecule, then how well it gets distributed in the body, how well it gets metabolized. Does it result in any metabolites or toxic metabolites which can be built up in the system, and how well it gets cleared from the system. Then you have the when I was telling about pharmacokinetics, for example, if you say your medicine works like or better than chloroquine, for example, or it could be any allopathic drug, don't you think it could also have some of its toxicity? Or maybe not. We will have to assess that though. So then we have the option of, we can study pharmacodynamics of these molecules. Whether this is how the body treats the drug. Whether it can have the desired activity that you have targeted, or is it showing any off-target results? How good is its therapeutic window? Is the body exposed to it for a long duration to cause any toxicity? Or is it too short that the desired action is not going to happen? And the clearance time. So these things I will explain with the perspective of our COVID-19 studies. For example, our huge library of 408,000 molecules, we screened for all these studies, in the sense druggability, PK studies and PD studies, before we taking it, we take it to the clinical trial, which it is already in the phase 2 trials now. So in COVID, but there was a problem initially because it was a new virus, so we had to actually create the target protein. 5 of them were accepted. Once amino acid sequence was built, we could also actually build the target and test the molecules against these targets. First, we understood its solubility and discarded those molecules which did not fit the Lipinski's rule. And after that, we also ensured that it doesn't cause any kind of toxicity in the body. Especially, there are cytochrome P450 enzymes, superfamily of enzymes, which you need to take care that this will not inhibit those enzymes, because they are very important in steroid synthesis or many of the drug synthesis also. Many of the medicines that are taken are also synthesized by them. So if you happen to inhibit them, medicines build up in the body and you're exposed to toxicity. So after analyzing the PK and ensuring that the molecules are safe, then we targeted it against the target proteins, RDRP, spike proteins, 3CL-Pro, PL-Pro, M protein, and E protein. So finally, we could get about 30 plant molecules from the potential of 10 potential 10 plants. So we did the molecular. This is at the level of molecular docking. But then comes the scenario of molecular dynamics. So if you understand molecular docking, it is a dry run actually. But in the in computer there is, we see it with the target, see the target ligand binding happens, to what extent, etc., etc. But that cannot actually be the ultimate. That can be only the clue. Very important next is the molecular dynamics simulation, where you assess the drug in the actual biological simulation. For example, if you draw a cell, you will beautifully draw a nucleus or mitochondria around it, and it looks beautiful. But in reality, in the cell, it doesn't stay like that. It is in the gush of water. Everywhere there is molecular exchange taking place. It's in there's some kind of river going on. So your cells are, there are molecular exchange going on. pH is different. Everything is different. So when you test your drug against this scenario, then you can really understand how stable it is and how strong is its target ligand binding. Because here what we have, the approved thing is 100 nanosecond endo simulation was done. So this is quite a good drug-like molecule. So after doing this is very important to do. After doing this, we confirm the same. This is the output we get during molecular dynamic simulation. And the software, that's why this quality of the software is also important here. And of course, the quality of the competent computer biologist, a computational biologist, thanks to Dr. Bharat here. So we have such outputs, and we can understand how good is our molecule. And when we take it to in vitro studies, we also could replicate most of the, results. Here you can see the IC50 of the molecules. This is also a very important part of the drug likeness, because just because if your molecule inhibits any activity, or in this case nullifies the viral replication, stops viral replication, it doesn't mean anything. You need to understand that the drug has to stay there for a certain amount of time. That activity should be there for certain amount of time, so that before even the next dose is given, the virus shouldn't start multiplying again. So IC50 indicates the concentration of this drug required to have 50% efficacy. So this needs to be well understood, and it has to be, suppose your molecule is 100 mg, it doesn't make a good drug because it's too much of a quantity. So here you can see they're all in the micromolar concentrations. So again, after this, we have to, in the chart, you can see there are some which are not showing good results. So we do have to have to and fro relation with the computational chemistry and the in vitro, because why did it happen? We need to understand whether there was a problem with the solvent fraction, or whether there was a problem with the sample itself. Did it really have the molecule? Everything has to be reassessed. So another interesting thing while talking about anecdotal and sometimes anecdotal incidences and hearsay incidences make you assume things wrongly. For example, when the COVID broke out and everybody were doing the in silico studies, glyceric acid was hailed as very useful medicine in reducing the viral replication. In fact, many papers were published. We also actually published a paper on this. But when we took it to the in vitro studies, you can see its efficacy is just 6 to 7% as against the 99% of the molecule that we are using in the current medicine. So it's in silico is not the ultimate, or the computational chemistry is not the ultimate. I mean, it does have shortcomings. We need to continue the study. It can be a guiding light. Another thing is, during this time, there was opinion that glyceric acid is a single molecule. You need to use a whole drug to understand to get the better efficacy. That's what we did here actually. Glycyrrhiza gabler in the second table you can see. We used the whole extract, but unfortunately we had negative result in the sense it actually never stopped the replication. It had no activity. Similarly, Tinospora cordifolia, which is also a hailed antiviral drug, did not show efficacy. Of course, I'm not saying when consumed it doesn't show efficacy, but at this experiment, at this setting, it has not shown the effectiveness. There could be many reasons for that. So these things can be understood only if you follow the precision path and critically evaluate the drugs that we are planning to bring about. So I want to summarize saying that molecular docking, or this computational chemistry, is a preliminary step, of course. You need to study further using the QSAR or MD simulation, but it can be a very good, it can help to create a very good precision-oriented platform for the assessment of Ayurvedic medicines, as the accessible number is huge, complex and diverse in its chemistry. Of course, I don't discount the classical approach, but for developing any precision-based medicine, for example, if you want to develop a specific anti-cancer, or it could be anti-new virus, say we tomorrow have a new virus, H1N5 or something, we need to have a platform to assess and quickly come out with the medicine. You all know about the cytokine storm that happens in the COVID. If you want to have IL-6 inhibition or similar cytokine inhibitors, you definitely need to pursue this path. So just to give you an idea, these are the drugs approved by FDA in 2020. You can see the big chunk is from natural products actually, but none from India, because we have not followed this path. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Lata Damle. And I don't want to ask many questions because it would look like a manufactured question. So I would like ask the other panelists and maybe anybody else who is listening to this talk.
Madam, how molecular study effective is that drug is in different formulations like Churna, Kashaya? Is any difference in there at the time of study?
No, at this time of study, you mean this study? Are you asking about the study?
No, generally.
No, generally, if you have to study any plant or any drug, you have to first understand its solubility and then take that kind of extraction. When you do the extraction, it could be Churna or it could be Arishta or anything, you must first ensure that this molecule is present in that active compound, which can be done through HPLC.
Yeah, okay, madam.
Dr. Lata.
Hello.
Hello, sir, tell me.
Yeah, the thing is that I think what he is pointing out is whether is it possible to do the molecular docking studies with the compound that is like Arishta. If you take an Arishta or Churna, whether is it possible to do the molecular docking study? That's what
it is. Yes, probably he is asking about polypharmacology approach.
Yeah, right.
Yeah? So it is definitely possible when you will have to use more number of compounds and understand its cross interaction as well. It is more time consuming than the single drug definitely, but it is possible.
Uh, can I ask you a question? The thing is that if you are taking, for example, Vilyavadi Guliya, so whether you will be able to do a molecular docking study on that, and whether you will be able
the docking study is done by its molecules or the active compounds in it. We don't put Vilyavadi Gulika in any, it is not like an in vitro study where you use the material itself. It is the structure of those molecules that are allowed into the studies. So you need to understand what does Vilyavadi Gulika contains. It may have some 10 medicines in it, right? In those 10 medicines, it could be many. If you can tell me, because offhand I am not getting the Vilyavadi Gulika contents. Anyway, Vilva is there. For example, it is eagle marmelos. Now, eagle marmelos has an active compounds, maybe about 4 or 5 or 10. So each one of them will have to be studied, and each one of them has to be studied with the cross interaction with another molecule as well.
The thing is that most of the people who are doing the study are those who are interested to do it. They find it that when it comes to the product part, they always think about taking the product as such and do the study. So how far is it possible? That is the most important thing that we have to address. That has always been actually. For example, I'll tell you, in there is goat's urine is there, then other medicine, so many, almost 10 drugs are there.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
It is actually, it is not a product, you're trying the product and then telling its efficacy. Actually, you must understand whether all those materials that you are putting into that, is it really needed? Okay, there was also in Kashayam or any, you have 10 drugs. All of them, are they needed? You need to understand, are we wasting some of it because some of them may not be absorbed at all? We don't know. So we need to study that first and then formulate. Actually, that should be the better way.
And usually people talk about the cumulative effect of all these things.
I did show you I did show you about the wholeness of the Glyceris glabra, but one table was missing actually. In fact, we had 3 molecules separately for anti-COVID efficacy, but when we actually mixed these 3 ingredients, we did not have enough efficacy. So we cannot actually blindly say that there will be a cumulative effect. We really don't know. There could be, sometimes this impreciseness is actually causing lack of therapeutic advantage. Maybe we will blame it on to individuality or something else during that time. So I think we need to work on our preparations and really understand whether how well it is formulated.
Doctor, that could also be because of if you are taking the 3 things together, the dosage difference may also work. For example, if you are taking 500 milligram of a single product, and
but you can. We did try the same amount of molar concentration of each mixed. For example, if you have that fear, you can as well ask the patient to take 2 capsules instead of 1 capsule, right? But the efficacy, is it really? I don't know. I mean, we can't simply say that cumulative will work or cumulative will not work, or single drug will work or single drug. It has to be studied. That is what is my aim of all this actually. It has to be studied in depth.
Thank you.
Dr. Manoj, can I add on?
Yeah.
Yeah, the best way to work when you have a compound like that, Vilyavadi Gulika, would be to actually make the formulation, then run analytical chemistry and find out which all molecules are present in your final compound through SPLC and the LCMS. So once you identify that these kind of compounds are actually present, then individually they can be studied in the computer. Polypharmacology looks to be very easy way for people to speak, but it's actually extremely difficult. Imagine that you have 5 compounds, major 5 compounds at between say 5 to 10 micromolar concentration. Now, all these 5 compounds should be present at the same time with the same pK values. The plasma half-life and the presence of the molecules in the blood at a given time should be very similar. Otherwise, polypharmacology cannot work. It cannot. It is not like it will switch off one switch and after that the second molecule will come and it will do the second switch. I think so. Polypharmacology is very primitive. It's a very complex subject, and to replicate polypharmacology in humans, we may have to do a lot of animal studies, especially PKPD studies.
Yeah, so that's what. It is not impossible, but it's extremely time consuming and difficult to do. But it is possible to do, but when you know the list of active compounds in it.
Anyway, I think it's a long way ahead, right? Not